Although, interestingly enough, there is an issue with heat. So I'm going to insert some footage here of a problem I've been having. Okay, so the issue is this chip here, the VIC-2 chip. I've been reading on forums about this. Apparently, NTSC VIC-2 chips, the Mark II reloaded motherboard, sometimes has trouble recognizing them. I would say turning the system on maybe once out of every 5 times it would actually boot up correctly and read the chip. So I was thinking maybe there was something wrong with my particular VIC-2, and I had a spare and I tried it and got the same thing. And I was a little frustrated, and people were saying that this particular revision of the VIC, which is the 6567 R8, NTSC apparently was having issues, but there was a firmware update which supposedly fixed it, and I checked and I had already updated the firmware and already had the fix, and it still was a problem. Then I decided to take my childhood C64 out, and I'll just grab that and show it real quick. So this is my childhood C64. Much less fancy, but you know, it's a Commodore 64 nonetheless. So I know that everything is good in this. I've had no problems with it at any point. It's always worked great. So I decided to risk taking the VIC-2 out and sticking it in the C64 Reloaded Mark II motherboard to see what happened. Booted it up just fine. Booted it up over and over and over. No problems ever. It worked perfectly every time. So this leads me to believe that it's not so much a R8 issue, because the VIC-2 in my original childhood one is an R8. So same problem. Should have been there, but it wasn't. So it was fine. But the problem went away when I swapped in this chip. Plus, one of my spares was an R9 revision instead of an R8 and still had the same problem. So I think what the actual issue is that these chips are maybe a little bit on the fried side or something, and the reloaded motherboard must be like really sensitive or something like that. So I thought everything was cool. Played with it for like an hour, and then I got a whole bunch of gross video distortion like this. Well, that leads me to believe that there's a heating issue. And it makes sense if you stop and think about it, because the revised chipset for the C64C runs cooler than the original chipset in the C64, the bread bin style. So the chips that I'm using in here are largely from bread bin CPUs, with the exception of this guy here, which is the revised SID. I actually have both versions of the SID, so I can hot swap between them. If I want a different sounded SID, I can do that, which is really cool. And you could even do this with the quote-unquote stereo, so a single SID can still go out the left and right channels, and I could swap between them. It's pretty great. One of the top features of the C64 Reloaded motherboard, actually. Anyway, I'm going to put heat sinks on this and see if it solves the problem. So I don't know how exciting it'll be watching me put the heat sinks on, but these are just these little copper ones. Here we go. I think it was like $7 for 6 of them, so it's pretty cheap. They come with their own adhesive. You just peel it off and stick them on. So I'm going to do it. Oh, for the record, I previously cleaned off the VIC-2 chip with some alcohol, so it should be cool. Just a little update here. My C64 has been running for about 2 hours. Not seeing any problems. Castlevania running. Woo, seems fine. Hard to do this with one hand. And with the space heater turned on, I'm going to try turning the space heater off and see what happens. Still happening. Rebooting. Still happening. I really do think it's a heating issue. If you can tell, but the text is actually wiggling. Okay, it seems okay-ish right now. I'm going to turn the space heater back on. I just turned the space heater back on. Well, again, I don't know if you can tell, but the screen image is wobbling more and more. It's actually pretty obvious on this square piece of the Tetris screen here. I don't know if it's going to barf like it did before, but I can try and load the same disk that I did before when it did that. Alright, so I have the heat sinks on the VIC-2 chip. It's been running for about 4 hours. Yeah, about 4 hours. I also turned on the heater in here because it's kind of cold, and this is happening. So the overheating problem is not gone despite adding a heat sink. So I opened up the case, and you can see my heat sinked VIC-2 here, and I touched it, and the heat sinks are warm. They're not hot, it's not burning me. And if I touch the chip itself, it feels pretty okay. All the other chips are not too bad. The 6510, the CPU, it's not warm at all, really. The SID chips have a little heat to them, not too much. But yeah, nothing else seems warm. So I'm starting to think that maybe there's just plain a problem with the way this motherboard runs NTSC VIC-2 chips. It's just warm. I mean, it doesn't feel hot. Like, I'm a little surprised I was seeing the video glitches I am. But I don't know what else to do other than trying to cram a fan in here, and this is a very small case, so I don't know.